Men, what happened on a first date that made you run for the hills? Real quick, first and foremost, I know I said today was going to be a r/no sleep post, but I honestly forgot it was Valentine's Day and wanted to get something out for the occasion. It also makes for a nice distraction from my girlfriend who's a little less than pleased about my forgetfulness, so let's hop right in. Story 1. She brought up details about me that I had never told her and were not publicly easy to attain. To be more clear, during icebreaker conversations, she let slip where I work, when I generally work there, the name of my recent ex, my mother's name, and generally where I live, like postal code area. I'm not very active online besides Reddit and a little bit of Instagram, and I have a small but close friend circle of immediate people who would not have known her. It wasn't just that she knew a bunch about me though, but that she kind of found reasons to bring up the details. After she dropped my mother's name, I mentioned that it was strange how much she knew about me, at which point she continued telling me things she knew about me, like she thought it would impress me or something. I remember Googling, "Can you file a restraining order against someone you don't know?" later that night after the date. Story 2. She would not stop talking about her ex-boyfriend. I'd tried to change the topic to something else, and she'd make sure that I knew what her ex thought about that topic too. I may as well have been on a date with her ex, considering I walked away knowing more about him than I did about her. Story 3. We met in the parking lot of a popular diner where she lived. She was standing outside her car finishing a smoke, and we made small talk. But she seemed to go out of her way to contradict almost everything I was saying, and was borderline rude about it. As we approached the door to the diner, she took one look at the door and then back to me and went, "Well?" Apparently, I wasn't fast enough in opening the door for her. I opened the door, let her step inside, and then said, "You know what? I think I'm gonna head home. Good luck." The look on her face was priceless. Story 4. On her profile, she said that she was something like 5'9", 70 kilograms, brunette, no piercings or tattoos, single and child-free, amongst other things. In reality, she was about 5 foot, well over 100 kilograms, blonde, and didn't even try to hide the tattoo on her arm, very clearly had pierced nipples sticking through her shirt, and an enormous rack that could not have possibly been the B-cups she claimed on her profile. She spent much of the next 3 hours telling me how hard it was dealing with her baby's expensive and debilitating medical problems while the kid's father was in prison. Everything on her profile was a lie. We have universal health care here, and the baby's problem was webbed fingers. At some point, she told me about how the father had another year to serve for beating the shit out of some guy he saw her with. On the upside, I bought a new pair of sunglasses for that date, and am still wearing them more than a decade later. Story 5. She told me she was intentionally late because she wanted to make sure she could watch me walk from my vehicle into the restaurant, be seated at the table, and not ditch her. She then told me that she'd been married 3 times and was younger than 30 years old. All weird, huge red flags, but honestly sad to think of all the hurt she must have been through to get to that point in her life. Story 6. Met a date for coffee who told me that she was looking for a traditional gentleman who would buy her a specific expensive designer coat as a gesture of goodwill. When I said I'd think about it after we dated for a while, she played the "don't you love me" angle and really pushed for it. I'd met her less than an hour prior, and our texting had been brief up until that point. Upon further refusal, this 30-some-year-old woman proceeded to have a literal tantrum right in front of me, tears and everything. God, I could feel my dick physically recoiling from her. Story 7. I don't know how to describe this, but her table manners were odd. Instead of just eating her food, she ripped it all apart. She ordered some type of sandwich and takes the entire sandwich apart, rips all the meat and lettuce up, like minced it with her fork, and then she dunked pieces of her sandwich bread into her water and ate it, like a bird or something. I don't know why it bothered me so much, but she was really pretty, so I pushed past it. She started bringing up her past relationships, not necessarily talking about exes, but she seemed to change and become visually aggravated with me when I mentioned my last relationship, like she was already possessive and jealous from the very first date. My red flag alert was blaring at this point, so I paid for the meal and told her I had to work the next day, so I couldn't come back to her place. She managed to kill my super high sex drive, something which, until that point, I thought was impossible. Story 8. Near the end of our first and only date, we were making out and she pulled back to say, "I should tell you something. I have a lot of assault charges against me. So I asked, from who? My exes. So we made out a little bit more, and I never spoke to her again. She then died. I had nothing to do with that part. It's just crazy to think about it. I'm sorry, what? How the hell is this the whole story? She assaulted her exes and died. How? Did the next guy she dated fight back a little too hard? Did she OD? Did an alien come down and telekinetically make her brain explode to obtain her furon DNA? And he doesn't give us an answer in the replies either. He just says he found out through social media. So we all get to enjoy this cliffhanger together, I guess. Story 9. She started talking about all the guys she knows and all the parties she's been to. She did not spare me a single detail about who she was screwing and how she felt about every single one of them. She went on to judge every single person in every social circle she'd belonged to. All the while, I wasn't able to get a word in. So, at some point, I mentally checked out, and I just enjoyed my coffee while reducing her to background noise. I replied or commented every few paragraphs, so I didn't seem rude. The kicker, she went on to tell all our mutual friends that she absolutely loved our outing, and that I was an amazing listener. The reality of the situation was that by the end of the night, I was one gossip story away from an aneurysm. That's actually kind of funny because in another video I did about pickup lines, someone was saying how just shutting up and listening was for women the equivalent of getting impromptu head for a guy. I do hope that this fella didn't end up with a stalker after that, though. Story 10. She showed up with a kid she'd never mentioned before, expected me to pay for not only our coffees, but also lunch for said kid. She then got mad when I looked confused at her, and she said, "How do you expect to be a father if you can't even handle paying for a meal?" I said, "Fine." Walked to the counter and said, "I'm paying for my coffee, thanks." She got stuck with 2 lunches and about 3 or so drinks. When I got home, she started spamming me about how I am a predator, how I SA'd her, and how she's going to call the police and I'll end up in jail. The police did actually turn up, several times, and I showed them all the increasing screenshots because I didn't block her and kept getting more evidence. Getting the restraining order was extremely easy because she flew off the fucking handle in court and tried to play the victim. How she was just trying to be a good mother and for once wanted something for herself, so I went on a date with a seemingly nice guy who ended up being the worst man imaginable. Pfft, don't stick your dick in crazy, lads. Story 11. Met her for a first date at a restaurant bar of her choosing. I was nursing a beer with her being over 15 minutes late, and she walks in, very obviously drunk, immediately orders 4 shots and a beer, pounds all 4 shots, takes a huge swig of the beer and orders 4 more shots. Bartender, awesome dude, gives me a heads up that she's about to run a $100+ tab and make a scene when I refuse to pay for it. I guess she was a regular who did this often. Dude said if I should leave, now'd be the time. Slipped him a 20 and tried to leave. She runs out to the parking lot, sees me leaving, and begins to belligerently scream at me for ghosting her in the middle of her date. I told her this wasn't a good fit and just left. Don't know what happened to her, but thanks to the bartender for being a stand-up guy and letting me escape a bad situation before it had the chance to turn real sour. Story 12. Woke up at 2:30 a.m. to a girl jumping out of my roommate's bed and running out of the room. Turns out my roommate brought a girl back to the dorm and they were participating in some extracurricular activities and he put something in the wrong hole and she shit the bed everywhere, like all over the floor and everything. As she ran out of the room, the girl I had over, my crush, who I'd been wheeling for 3 years now, asked me to sign her out, and I never talked to her again. Only polite nods in passing to acknowledge a shared traumatic experience. Story 13. One of my ex's friends was some super high-powered lawyer who everyone always ranted and raved about. When I met her the first time, she refused to look up from her phone. The only time she participated in conversation was when someone asked her about work, or when someone asked how is she still single, and she proceeded to say that she was waiting for someone who was a solid 10, works out 4 to 5 times per week, former Ivy Leaguer, at least all-conference athlete, made over $350,000 a year, and had slept with less than 3 people before her. And none of those things were negotiable. For comparison purposes, she was a solid drunk 6. Story 14. When we went to order drinks, the bartender had his back turned while cutting limes. We probably waited about 15 seconds for him to notice us. I order my beer, and she screams at him for 45 seconds about disrespecting her before ordering a gin and tonic. I drank that amber ale in about 4 minutes flat before getting the fuck out of there. Damn, guys, we found one, a real live Karen in training. She may just be a cute little baby right now, running around abusing people for doing their jobs, but before we know it, she'll be all grown up. trying to get a lifetime supply of Snickers chocolate bars because the one she bought was broken, and trying to get Elon Musk banned from Twitter. For fuck's sakes. Story 15. By the time we got to the bar, I could tell she was on some kind of hard drugs. She was falling all over the place and slurring her words, so I took her to a pizza spot across the street so she wouldn't die. When I was taking her back home, she passed out in my car after mentioning, "At least I give good head." I drove as fast as I could to get her to her house, which luckily I had the address from for when I picked her up. She called me Connor when I woke her up when we got to her place, and my name's not even close to Connor. I'm not even close to being white. For the record, no, I did not let her give me head. I was dead sober and not comfortable with the idea of it. Not to mention her hands and face were also covered in pizza grease, and she was holding a slice of pizza balled up in her hand like a fist. Story 16. Went on a date with a woman that warned me she had some health issues. She said it was some kind of slight lung issue when she was born, where her lungs are not completely developed, so she suffers from chronic asthma and other things. We get to the table, we sit down, order food, and then just before the food got there, she flew into a coughing fit so hard she was turning blue. When that subsided, the smell of fecal matter filled the air, and then she admitted she pottied a little bit. She then asked if she could be excused, to which I just kind of nodded, and waited for almost an hour before I realized she did a goddamn shit and split. Story 17. I hooked up with a girl back when I was living at my parents' place, and the next morning I got out of the shower to find her with my parents. She sees me and she says, "Barry McBareface and I have got something to tell you," to which I was very confused, and my parents clearly thought we were going to announce that she was pregnant or something. "We wanted to tell you that we're officially a couple." This is someone I met the day before and had a drunken hookup with. Definitely my shortest ever relationship. Cool parents, a weird-ass chick. I wonder if they made a new rule for him after that, though. "Listen, son, it's okay to bring over hookups and one-night stands, but please, for the love of God, keep stage 5 clingers out of our house." Story 18. We were in the back of her van making out. Not a family van, a work van that she drove, that she was also sleeping in. She would sleep in it parked at the front of her house because she had to throw her mattress out due to bed bugs. I wasn't just banging chicks living in vans, don't worry. Anyway, halfway through making out with her, she took a can of air duster and started huffing it, then asked me if I wanted some. She fell over and hit her head pretty hard on the wall of her van after that. I didn't run for the hills, I made sure she was okay, but I didn't call her back after that. Story 19. I found little baggies of crystal in her bathroom mirror, along with small balls of aluminum foil in several spots around the home, plus multiple bloody needles wrapped in toilet paper in the trash can next to her toilet. They weren't even wrapped well. I almost stabbed myself reaching for the wet wipes. I was young and didn't realize at the time how bad things could get. She was arrested for murder 6 months later. Story 20. Get set up on a blind date by a female friend. Picked up this girl and she talked. A lot. Talked through dinner. And also during the fucking movie in a theater. It was so bad that people in front of us turned around and asked her to be quiet. I had not contributed to the one-sided in-movie conversation at all. Story 21. She cried about her ex, while in doggy style, because it was his favorite position. Yeah, I'd wanted to smash this girl for like 3 years, and it took up until then to get the chance. Fate was not on my side here. God, my story doesn't hold a candle to most of these, or the ones in the rapid fire that we're about to get to. But here we go. So I met this girl on Hinge, and we set up a date to meet at the Cat Cafe in my city. I went to get us coffees, and she insisted that she get her own. Alright, cool. I like a girl who decidedly won't use me as a free bank loan. The conversation was just wretched, though, and super forced. At one point, she starts calling herself some weird Latin word, and when I ask her what it means, she goes, "Oh, it basically means that I'm a genius," and then gives me her IQ test score. I don't know what the fuck it was. I don't care enough to remember. I should have walked out then, but we continued to hang out for a few hours. After the cafe, we went to a mall nearby, and as she gets up, she puts on this little preschooler backpack that's way too small for her 5'11" or so frame. And from that point, it was just very, personal bubbly. We walked like acquaintances, not even, really good acquaintances, just kind of, we met through a friend and sort of, we know each other's names. We kept benign conversation no matter how hard I tried to find an interesting topic, and any of my advances were met with a really awkward stiffness that made it feel like I was doing something horribly wrong. Thinking back to it, though, she may very well have just been an incredibly awkward person, but that was the first date that I'd had in a while at the time, and it was just fucking cringe-inducing. Alright guys, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying these stories so far. Next up is the rapid fire segment. 4 comments too short to make a full story of, but too good to be left out. Here we go. She said she stabbed some girl and that she just got out of rehab for doing a ton of drugs at a party and because her dad is in a gang. Never saw her again. The casual revelation of her engagement ring. Another guy showed up to her house because he left his phone there and she said she'd only give it to him if he gave her money for Plan B. She told me how she wrecked 2 marriages, one on purpose. Everything, and I mean everything in her house was sticky, like dried soda sticky, movie theater floor sticky. Ugh, the chairs, the counters, everything. Met her at a trendy cake and coffee shop, and when she sat down, she screamed, "I do not like to have my feet licked or touched." She mentioned her husband was on a trip. I just stood up and walked over to the waiter to pay for my food, and then left while she was still trying to figure out what the hell was going on. She started talking about how she believed aliens were already here and that they were trying to control us through Elon Musk. She asked if my health insurance covered boob jobs. She guided the conversation into her study and interest of serial killers, then kept going back to talking about them even when I attempted to move the conversation elsewhere. We ended the date early because she got a call. We get back to her place and she gets arrested. So guys, that's it for today. Again, if you enjoyed this, go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons, as well as the bell to make sure you get notified when I post. I'm ReddList. I hope you all have a great Valentine's Day. Eat some chocolate, be a fat ass, sit on the couch and binge watch some Netflix before they start doing their stupid new subscription bullshit. I personally am going to go do some damage control with my girlfriend, and I will see you next time.